Hi, it's Rachel. Welcome back to another book talk. I hope that everyone is doing well. And today, of course, because we're in the middle of, at this time of pandemic, why not talk about dystopias? I know that there are a lot of people who enjoy reading dystopias, maybe not during this time, but we all handle things differently. So I just want to go over one that's a little bit older because it's a trilogy, and the third book in it just came out last year. So if you like to read a series, this would be an excellent one to pick up. The other two are new ones that just came out last year. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and talk to you about dystopias. Now, if you don't know what a dystopia is, it is a subclass of science fiction in which we take a look at the world. And instead of things being wonderful and perfect, although they could look like that from the outside, there is an underlying seed of, yeah, no, it's not so good. And so our world is fractured. So some of our earliest dystopias that we have would be 1984 by George Orwell, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And so it takes what looks like it's going to be a wonderful thing, and it turns it upon itself. Now, the wonderful thing about dystopias is that there's always a little bit of truth to what they have to share, meaning it takes a look at our world now and it makes predictions about what it sees and what it believes is going to happen if people don't wake up, use their voices, and make a change. Now, this, of course, is going to be to the author's perspective. But a lot of people enjoy reading these, and I think it's because of what it has to say about our society. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start off with Internment. So Internment is a book by Samira Ahmed, and of course, because I'm going to be me, it is signed. I had the pleasure of meeting Samira at the ALA conference in January. And Internment is going to be like not even 15 years into the future. We're like 15 minutes into the future, okay? So for those of you who are familiar with World War II and what we politely call the Japanese internment camps, and there were German internment camps too in the United States, we can go ahead and just call it what it is, which is incarceration. This is a similar idea. Except what is happening here is that we are living in the United States underneath a very nationalistic president and government. Okay, so also the legislature, where it is not okay to be Muslim. And part of that has to do with the war on terror. If you are Muslim, perhaps you are the enemy. We are not safe. Your religious practices make you suspect. And of course, this is all going back to 9/11 and to those sorts of events. And so, just like if you are, again, familiar with what happened in World War II, the first things that start to happen to people are there are restrictions laid out. Well, you have a curfew. Okay, you can't go out after this time if you are Muslim. You have restrictions on your business. So, for example, the main character here, who is Layla, her name is Layla Amin. Her father is a professor at the university that they basically live in a university college town. It's a very small and quieter place. He is fired from his job. Okay. He is a English professor. He is a poet, a beautiful, nationally recognized, award-winning poet. He is fired. There are book burnings. And guess what? Yes, his book is one of those that is burned. Because even though in his poems, and you will see there were poems in this book that are his, they talk about restarting your life, regenerating your life, letting things go. They're actually seen as being incendiary against the government. They're interpreted differently. Okay. All of these are shades. If for anybody who has studied World War II and things that were happening against people that were not deemed okay, but instead were deemed as enemy combatants, this is indeed the same kind of process. Until eventually, Muslims are rounded up and put into internment camps. So that's what happens to Layla and her family. And her mother is a health professional, a medical professional. Her parents are both very learned people. And they're very much like, we just need to be quiet. We'll get through this. Things will get back to normal. Just shh, 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 shh. And if you can see from the cover, it says resist. This is not Layla's way of handling things. It's also important to note that Layla's boyfriend, which you meet right away in the very beginning, David, is Jewish. He is not targeted at all, but they make a point of saying that in his family, many people were lost during World War II, during the Holocaust. And so there's a lot of things connections that Samira Ahmed is making. So what you have is a very near future. The wall between Mexico and the United States is built. And those who do not have citizenship in the United States are shipped out back to their countries if they are not legal citizens. Those who are sent to these camps. So what happens when she gets to the camps? You see the cap that says resist. And of course, she's not literally wearing a cap that says resist. But how do you resist? How do you say, I have a voice, when you're being told you're no longer a citizen? I love what Samira wrote in here, which is raise your voice, speak your truth, resist. And so I feel like there's a lot of interesting lessons going on. I think that in a country, if you are watching this and you live in the United States, in a country that definitely values the freedom of speech, how often do we choose not to use it because we are afraid of repercussions? And then there are those people, of course, who use it, but we aren't using it in the ideals of a community. So there's a lot to consider when you read this book. And I think that there's a lot to also consider when you read this book about where are we as a community. And I'm thinking as a community, not just where you live in your city, but where we are as an entire society. So definitely check out Internment, Samira Ahmed, a near and maybe scary dystopia about what it means to be a citizen of this country. So the other book that I want to talk to you about, this one first came out in 2016, and it is a series. I'm not going to leave you hanging. The reason I'm talking about it is one of my favorite dystopias. I've read quite a few, but it's complete. And the third book came out last year. So it is Scythe by Neal Shusterman, and I do adore this author. He writes more than just dystopias, but if you like this series, he has his Unwind series, which is also a very good dystopia series too. So, I'm going to go ahead and brag on this one too. If I can make it straight, give it up. I can't make it straight. I'm still learning this YouTube stuff. All right. So, Scythe. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you the other covers really fast, okay? So this is the first book in the series, Scythe. I got all of them signed. That's right. I have to give a shout out to my husband, Mike. He got them signed because I had to do parent conferences that night. Okay, so he got them signed for me. That's all right. Don't be jelly. All right, so he went and got them signed for me. Thunderhead is the second book in the series. All right. And then the last book in the series is Toll. All right. So yeah, I owe a lot to my husband because he went and said he was a wonderful man, dynamite speaker. I'm a little jelly about that, but I'm very happy that I got them signed. So let's talk about Scythe, okay? Because it sets up the entire world. It's told from two different point of views, okay? So I'm trying to think. And it's also interrupted once in a while with, you can tell it looks like a little, I don't know why I can't get things straight today, man. I'm crooked. All right. So you have like your dialogue, what's going on, and then you have these like news excerpts of things that are going on, like articles, to kind of give you a placement in where you are in this history. Now, doesn't give you an exact timeline on how far ahead it is. But it is definitely based upon our technology. And the 2 point of views it comes across are Citra and Rowan. And you vacillate between both of their point of views and what is going on. And initially, they're together, and then they're separated. But let me go ahead and set up what is happening in this future. So imagine a world where there are no diseases. Now, mentioning this in the middle of, we are sheltering at home and it is a pandemic. That doesn't exist. Like, no diseases. And I don't mean just no diseases, honey. I mean no death. Death does not exist. Exactly. So you have no death, you have no disease. Oh, I didn't even mention this. You don't have to worry about money. You don't have to worry about money. You don't have to worry about money. So like if I want something, if I want to get like, if I think to myself and I say, God, I could really use like a new computer. It's like delivered right now. And the reason for that is this brave new world is run by what is known as the Thunderhead. Okay. And that is the title. I'll just have to reach for it, of the second book. So what is the Thunderhead? So you are probably familiar with the term the cloud. Okay. And it has to deal with technology. So in this future, there are no governments. There's no war. And that's because there's no governments. There's no delineation of like, this is the United States, this is China, this is Russia, this is for us, this is not for you. Instead, everything is ruled by technology. What we would know as the cloud basically is a comparison to the Thunderhead. And so the Thunderhead does not have a bias about, I want this group of people to succeed over this group of people. It wants harmony. It wants everyone to have everything that it needs. No starvation, nobody in need, nobody in want. Okay, if you need it, if you want it, you have it. And so it did away with the concept of needing government. And so that's why if you say I want a computer, and you sell the Thunderhead, I need a computer, the Thunderhead brings it to you. I need new clothes. Oh my God, I really want that pair of shoes. It brings it to you. Okay, because those things cease to have meaning. So it's like seems like an ideal society. Who wouldn't want to live there, right? Here's the little catch. If nobody gets sick, if nobody dies, if there's no war, you have one world. It's going to get filled up pretty quick. Okay? This kind of looks like the Grim Reaper, right? And they want to stay away from that image, but the Thunderhead starts to realize if nobody is dying, which is like a natural order of life, there's not enough room, right? So if I get to be 120 and I decide I want to be 20 again and get with somebody new and have a new family, I can do that. All right. Which means overpopulation. So the Thunderhead creates a group, an elite group called Scythes. And these people get to decide who lives or dies. Now they have a creed. They're not supposed to show bias toward anybody. Okay. They forsake their families for the most part. They live on their own. They have to kill people. Like basically you have a quota you have to meet. Okay. Um, and they have to, if people resist being killed, they have to kill like the rest of their family. You have to just accept it. And so they go through training, and the way they're selected are by other sides. They have to wear a cloak. This is how people know who they are. But they cannot wear black because that's too much like the Grim Reaper, and they don't necessarily walk around with one of these. They get to choose who they pick, how they pick, and the method. Okay, so some might choose poison, some might stab, kill, shoot, whatever. So if a scythe comes to your door and knocks, you let them in, and it could be dinner, and you invite them to sit, and you have no idea if they're there to kill you or not, and who they're going to kill. And let's say they kill mom after dinner, and then you all get to kiss their ring that they're wearing, and you're given 1 year immunity in the family, everyone in the family. Or they could just eat dinner, say, thank you very much, and leave, and then go down the hall and kill someone else. So, Citra and Rowan are chosen by a scythe to train to be scythes. And you quickly start to realize, and I won't mention some of the complications, but you quickly start to realize that there are different ways of being a scythe based on their experiences. And what would you do in this world? How would you cope and how would you live? A very intriguing concept. Definitely check it out. And gives you a lot to think about and a lot to contemplate. So the last book I have to share with you is, I realized as I was bringing these books out that two of my books have female Muslim protagonists, and they both, even though it's spelled differently, they both are named Layla. And I don't know why I find it funny, but I guess I do, because I didn't really think about it when I was selecting. But this is called The Light at the Bottom of the World, and it's by debut author London Shah. And this was for me, it was also kind of a haunting book, because I'll go ahead and admit a fear. Things at the bottom of the ocean, they frighten me. Mostly because we don't know everything that's at the bottom of the ocean. And so this is 60 some odd years in the future, okay? And basically, and it shouldn't be too shocking. It's the idea that the waters have risen. We've become closer to the sun. And we didn't really plan well for any of this. Human beings not planning well? Yes. So only some survived. And the land on top is not habitable because of us being closer to the sun and chemicals and so forth. And so they're attempting, according to the government, because you can trust the government always in dystopias, they are working on making it more habitable, okay? But until then, people live below the surface. Everything that we once knew, okay, Big Ben, you can see here, because this takes place in the what was London area, is underground and uninhabitable. And so they've had to create buildings and so forth that people can actually live in. They navigate through submersibles. And of course, human beings aren't meant to survive in this kind of atmosphere. So the ocean life has taken over, and it has evolved, and it is dangerous in many ways. And so humankind is shrinking, all right? And so we're going to enter in Layla McQueen. And Layla, her family's Muslim, and she is on her own right now. Her mother died, and her father, who she loves, has been arrested under false charges. Both him and her grandfather are astronomers, which is interesting. Are you an astronomer when you're underwater? You can read about that. But they were in their lab, and her father was arrested by the prime minister and his government. And in an attempt to help, save her father. Her grandfather ended up having a heart attack. Basically, they accused her father of being disloyal to the government, of being like a spy, of being not submersive, of being a radical. False charges, but they have no idea where he even is. So, Layla is left on her own. Now, one of the things that she loves to do is she's a speed racer. But of course, if you're underwater, you're going to be using submersibles. And she loves it. She loves how it is. But she starts taking it really seriously because once a year they have a marathon in submersibles. And whoever wins can ask the prime minister for whatever they want. And the prime minister must grant it. You can already see what she wants to ask for, right? Her father's release. Okay, so she begins training for this, and she has these great friends, twins, who are quite wealthy. She's not. Layla's not, because you're still going to have class divisions even when you're stuck underwater. Okay, and she begins training for it. But there's a lot that she doesn't know about what's going on with the government. Why would they take her father? What is it that he supposedly knows? What is it about the government and the different things that they're doing? And here's a further complication. So they start having attacks, and the government is warning about these anthropoids. Now, the anthropoids, because humans are not content to just let nature be. In the very beginning, they realized that they would not be able to help build and create the things they needed to create because they can't breathe underwater, and the pressure was too great for doing things like wearing suits. So they went and they tinkered, just like Dr. Frankenstein with the monster, and they took humans and they made them genetically modified so that they could breathe underwater, they could swim. And so they used them, we'll call it slavery, okay, to do this. Now, the whole thing is quite a mystery to most of the people because, the government doesn't release everything. And now, at some point, apparently the anthropoids revolted and they are attacking the different human colonies. And they're just as dangerous as the other sea life that has evolved. So that is another thing that the people underground have to worry about. And so that's something else that is thrown into the mix of what Layla is having to contend with, because she will do anything to get her father back. So The Light at the Bottom of the World is an interesting dystopia. I don't think I've read one before that has to deal with being at the bottom of the world in such a way. But when you think about ideas like global warming and what might happen and what would happen if, we were completely succumbed and there was no land. It is a very intriguing concept of what happens when nature is allowed to take over. And then at what cost are humans willing to tamper with it in order to bypass it. So I highly recommend this book. It is a standalone, as far as I know. I don't know if Shah's got any intentions of continuing it, but it felt complete to me when I read it. So I highly recommend this book. It's a very intriguing and different kind of dystopia. So even if you don't feel like reading dystopias right now, you can put those on your little checklist of things that you might want to look into later. So remember, even though dystopia books exist, it doesn't mean that we're living in a dystopia. Make sure that you take a good care of yourself, those that you love, stay healthy, be kind to each other. Remember that your story matters and that you are important. And until next time, peace.